See lovely faces on this morning. I think so. It's not, the sun's not shining, but it's great to see everybody in the room. So thank you very much for joining us today. I met Elaine a couple of months ago when Sage Foundation very generously hosted a war room for JVN to help us look at ourselves and the way in which we're portrayed. And Elaine was part of the team at Sage that helped us look at JVN in terms of our development. And Elaine started talking about the work that she has done. Elaine is the Sage Foundation manager for the UK and Ireland. And she started talking about the work that she has done with charities to help them pivot to virtual volunteering. So I thought, wouldn't that be fantastic to bring that to the volunteer managers in our network as well? And so thank you, Elaine. We're really, really delighted to have you here this morning. We appreciate your time. And I'd like to hand over and welcome you.
So thank you, Nikki. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, fine, thank you.
I think that is going to be the takeaway saying of the pandemic, isn't it? Is you're on mute. We can't hear you. So thank you, everybody. Yeah, so I'm really excited to be here today with you all to talk about virtual volunteering. I just want to put it out there now. I've had a few tech issues this morning, so I am on an iPad. I currently have a boiler engineer trying to fix my boiler because I have no heating, and I have got a cat that's freaking out that I've had to lock in the room with me because of all the noise. So if you do hear noises or see a little black face pop up, it's because she wants to come and say hello. So I will try my best to be professional, but I think this is the world of working at home, right? So Josh is very kindly going to share the deck with me. I didn't want to do death by PowerPoint, but sometimes it's easier just to have some visuals and some prompts. So I'm going to talk you through what Sage Foundation does, what we did before COVID, what our model was, looking at virtual volunteering, those bonkers and crazy ideas, as Joe and Nikki referred to, what we did to support our charity partners, and then where we are now. It's been 10 months, right, nearly 11, and evolving all the time with the work that we do, what the future looks like for us. And then what I'm also want to do is explore with you guys what ideas you could have. So we're going to have a little play around with a Google Ideas Jam board, put you into some teams and just look at some of the ideas, what the barriers are. Is there anything that you think that you could potentially do to get rolled out? So if you're all right to share the deck, Josh. Is that working? Or is it that everyone else can see it and I just can't see it? Oh, here we go. We are the wonders of technology. So you know me. So next slide, please. Josh, I'm going to sound like Chris Whitty, aren't I? Next slide, please. So agenda, as I've just run through there with you. So really just exploring what we did, why and how, moving on to the current day, what the future looks like for us, and then that Ideas Jam session with you both at the end. So if you can just move on to the next slide, please. Brilliant. So Sage Foundation, so who we are, we have a charter, which is on the slide there. Writing is a little bit small. I will be sharing this deck with you after, so you can grab a cuppa and read this at your own leisure. So we're a foundation in name only. Sage as a company, we are one of the largest tech companies globally. We're historically known for providing software, payroll software. A lot of people will still remember Sage Line 50, but we've evolved from those days. We offer HR software, CRM systems for people management, as well as a huge range of other tech issues that somebody from the tech team would know more about than me. So back to the foundation. We are a philanthropic business. Our CEO talks a lot about compassionate capitalism, that money made, there's nothing wrong with making money, but what is important is that that money is shared in the community that you operate in. So we operate a model called action philanthropy. So we don't just give money and write checks to charities and communities, say, off you go and help some poor people and send us some photos. It's action, and that action is driven through our colleagues, who we call our people power. So we have 17,000 colleagues globally. There's 3,000 in the UK that I support. And our mission is to coordinate volunteering, fundraising, but also awareness on social issues that our organisations like yourself, you're out there tackling these issues every single day. And we do that through our time. So every colleague gets 5 days volunteer and to do with what they want. So that could be a charity that we support, those a little bit more shortly, or whether it's a charity that they're passionate about in their own community. We also encourage and drive fundraising, and we also then, which we class as our investment. We invest time, our colleagues and money. Our colleagues invest their time and money. And that's where that word action really sets us aside from what everybody else is doing. But we also have a grants programme, and we also make investment via our donations. So the big thing that we do offer is a discounted or a reduced price access to Sage products, which we then support you to develop through what we call our NPO Success, non-profit organisation success network, where there's sort of webinars and training and resources. Big driver is around that financial literacy piece. We all know that it can be tough to balance the books at the moment in the charity sector. So there's additional resource available for you all, as well as all the charities that we support to make more with what you have. So back to the UK. So what does that mean for me? So we've got 7 offices. Our biggest one is up in Newcastle. It's about 1,500 staff there, down to London where I'm based, which is the corporate head office, where there's about 200, including all the big bosses. As mentioned, the charter that we spoke about earlier, we support women, youth and veterans. And the reason we support those is because they're often the most marginalised people within society. And they're also the furthest from the job market. So a big driver for us is to increase access to education and access to the workplace, but as well as encourage those entrepreneurial spirit within those organisations that we work with, because that's reflective of the business that we work with, small to medium-sized businesses. And often they're people that set them up themselves. So what does that look like in numbers? So to give you a perspective, last year, including 6 months of pandemic, we did 6,580 days of volunteering. We raised £300,000 within the UK and Ireland. And I'm really proud of those figures. My target, because let's be honest, we all have targets, was actually 7,000 days. So we weren't even 500 days off target. And as I said, and as I remind everybody, we were in a pandemic for 6 months. So our year runs a little bit differently, guys. For most people's years, we run a fiscal calendar, which, just in case you didn't know where I'm referring to, months. And the same with the money. My target was only 640,000, so 40,000 off. So the generosity of Sage colleagues being matched by a Sage Foundation was unprecedented in such a difficult year for everybody. If you can move on to the next slide for me, please, Josh. Thank you. So pre-COVID, so what did the world look like for us pre-COVID? It was all about volunteering, but a lot of our colleagues utilised volunteering to spend time with their teams, to do things together. It was very much about outside, getting out of the office, getting away from the building and doing something completely different. Now, because we are the mothership, essentially, we have a lot of people around the globe that would be visiting, spending time with their line managers and their teams. So we often then would have team-based volunteering. So we would have 50, 60 people off out to do something together. Large-scale events were our biggest draw. So we would have 400 people doing habitat management at one day. We had 300 people out in Manchester clearing up a wetland. And volunteering like that was really, really important to bring our colleagues together. But we didn't just do that. We encouraged our colleagues to do sorting charity shops, to visiting schools, to doing careers interviews, practicing writing on their CVs and mentoring. We also then would do a wide range of things that charities just needed doing, working on their social media, working on their website, giving them some advice around business strategy and planning. So we offered a range of volunteering that suited the needs of our colleagues as well as our charity partners. We did do virtual volunteering before lockdown, but it was minimal. As I said, the massive driver for our colleagues was actually just getting out and doing something different. And they wanted to see the service users of the charity. They wanted to be around those young people or the cats, or working with the people at the charity to really make a difference. But we did things, we used to call it desk-based volunteering. And we used to support organisations like TutorMate. So that was like half an hour of reading a week that could be booked around your diary. We work with the Peter Jones Foundation. So again, it's business mentoring, it's supporting schools. But what both had was that flexible option where people could book it around their work. And then we work with an organisation called Zooniverse, which is global people-powered research. So it's a platform where people can literally just log on and you can do everything from tracking monkeys in the wild to deciphering handwriting from criminal records from the 1800s for people that were shipped off to Australia in boats. We also have a big drive around giving blood. It's really quite a big driver for Sage Foundation, especially at the moment with there being such a shortage. And as I mentioned, cats there, we have a lot of people that do all of that. They go to the cat sanctuary, seal sanctuary, football coaching, things that they're really super passionate about themselves. So just a few pictures in there just to give you an example of some of the things that we had done previously. If we can go on to the next slide, please, Joshua. So pivoting our model, what did that look like? COVID-19 came, everybody kind of got to a point where we knew some kind of lockdown was happening, but it was still a shock, right? It still happened really quickly and it changed the world for everybody. So we literally got a call on the Monday, go to the office, get your stuff, you're working from home for the foreseeable. I went in, grabbed my screen, didn't think to pick up the multiple pairs of shoes I have under my desk or any of my personal stuff. Just grab the laptop, guys. 10 months later, here we are. So pivoting the model, I had a good cry, I'm not going to lie. We had a years of activity planned, 400 volunteering events. We had fundraising that we'd forecast was going to raise just under £250,000 for our charity partners. It was hard for everybody, and I know that you guys all went through that too. So we had to kind of think, because there was that outpouring of support, right? Everybody wanted to do something. We was getting emails from the CEO, from our MD, from colleagues. What can we do? So we just kind of was like, just stop, let's breathe, think, and let's do this properly. So the policy got rewritten overnight. And we thought about what do we need. We wrote to all of our charity partners and just sort of put it out there. This is what we're going to have to do. We have to find a way to volunteer from home. Standing still was not an option for us. We had to do more. And then we started looking and we're thinking, right, what can we do? So some of our charity partners were a little bit more entrepreneurial than others because they were ahead of the game. They had already offered virtual volunteering, or they'd already flipped their model. And by reaching out to everybody and just being honest, humble, and saying, let's talk, let's think about how we can do this. And some of them just weren't ready. Some of them weren't there. They're still not. They're very much, they're batting down the hatches, they're riding out the storm and waiting to see what happens the other side. So what we wanted to focus on is making sure that anything that we did was aligned to a donation. And that was really important to us. So it's almost like we went to that we were buying volunteer time. But if we were expecting our charity partners to come up with creative ways to offer our colleagues a way to give back, we knew there would be a cost there. So that was a really important factor for us. And like I said, it comes back to that first slide, it's action philanthropy. It wasn't just about giving our charity partners money because they were struggling through COVID. It was about making sure that our colleagues knew what they were going through and what they could do to help. So just some notes there on the slide. Within 4 weeks, we arranged our big virtual day in, and I'll cover more of that in our next slide. But we moved at pace, all of these corporate worlds, we did a sprint, we moved at pace, we accelerated. I'll call it working night and day to find ways to give back and do something, and that's what we did. We loosened our interpretation of volunteering. That's easier for some organisations than others to do, but that was what the crux of it was. We literally stretched what we believed our volunteering was to enable our colleagues more flexibility to do more with our charity partners. And like I keep saying, it's that fundraising element. Historically for us, they've been so different. Volunteering, fundraising, there wasn't a blur, and we aligned those. So if you were fundraising, you now could take one of those 5 days. So moving on to the next slide, please, Joshua. Thank you. So our virtual volunteering. So we're lucky enough at Sage that we have a marketing department. So they do rebrand everything. So this was our branding, enter a new world of virtual volunteering to make a real difference. So we was very lucky that that was produced really quickly. So it almost felt like a campaign rather than just us going, what are we doing? Quick, just make up some ideas. And there was making up some ideas. I'm not going to lie to you guys. This was like thinking on the back foot. I'm a Girl Guide leader. I have been since I was a child. So some of the stuff I was pulling out of the bag was stuff I'd done as guides when I was a kid, you know, the craft and the team building and all of those things, all of a sudden were coming out of the woodwork. And we looked at what each charity's partners, what their thing was, you know, were they supporting of schools? Did they support food banks? What was the crux of what they offered, and how could we adapt and mould that to then we find something that mutually benefited them and our colleagues? And like I keep coming back to, it's that focus of awareness as well as money. I say at Sage we're in a very privileged position that the company literally moved heaven and earth for us to be able to work at home within a matter of days, and we're still here 10 months. They look after us so well, but we recognise that not everybody is that lucky. And what I wanted is our colleagues to be aware of those social issues that our charities were tackling head on during a pandemic. So where we then sort of were looking at how we can get colleagues to tell their story to our colleagues whilst they're at home. And we tried to arrange as many activities that included children and families. I mean, we've gone back to school and now we're back to homeschooling. So all of a sudden everyone just goes, mate, I'm trying to teach my kid maths that I don't understand. Volunteering falls down their priority list. But if you then offer them opportunities of things that they can do with their children, all of a sudden they take that a little bit differently. And again, families, we had people that were just dispersed all over. I mean, I'm home alone myself, apart from the boiler engineer. So it was really nice that we could then encourage people to do things via Zoom and social interaction that they could do together. We had lots and lots of people doing that, sort of these Skype calls with parents and children all over the country. We tried to provide everything that would be needed, like, because people were already kind of stressing, a little bit panicky, not sure. So we got everything together. We created these decks with step-by-step guides on what to do. We even hyperlinked to the shopping list if they needed to order things off of Amazon. We wanted to just create templates for everything that made engagement easier. Now that was a lot of work for us, and there was many a 1 o'clock in the morning jobby where we were all messaging each other, checking things. Joe's had to spell check this deck for me today because your eyes start twitching at 11 o'clock at night. But it was important to have all of those resources, again, to make that experience easier for our colleagues to be able to support the charities. We tried to get pieces to camera from the charities where we knew that our colleagues loved that engagement with charities, going in, meeting them, finding out what they do. We tried to replicate that. So we had some really moving and quite powerful videos, and they were as simple as literally doing a selfie video, and we then loaded those in so our colleagues could watch those videos and try to get an understanding of what the charity did and what they were going through right now. We wanted to create that empathy and awareness. Like I said, that we had branding. Clear communication was the key. I know we are lucky to have, because we're part of a massive machine, that we have all these people that specialise in those areas. But the comms, the step-by-step, that real clear process made a difference. Because I want to tell everyone everything. I get all over excited and I'm like, we're doing this, blah. No, because everybody's a little bit reactive themselves. So we had to have that clear information flow, and that made a massive difference. We wanted to make people to remember why it was important to take the time to give back. So we had a lot more information on social media. We really went all out, and we were tweeting a lot. We were making sure that our colleagues were following charity partners on Twitter, on LinkedIn and things like that, and really actively encouraging our colleagues to showcase what they're doing, because again, it just created that buzz outside of the business. And do you know what? It was senior leader engagement. I know as charities, you've all got organisations that you work with, but what I call the big bosses did make a little bit of a difference. I was begging, borrowing, hustling, like, come on, give me 10 minutes of your time. But the minute you put a senior leader on in front of our colleagues to showcase that they were taking the time to volunteer and give back, that also made a massive difference, because it's that message that, well, I'm running the company in a pandemic, I'm finding the time to give back, can you? And that made a big difference. And I just think we were just focused on making sure that that engagement continued with our charities, that the relationship didn't wane, and who knew that we would still be here 11 months later. But at the time, it was just important for our colleagues to recognise that they were out there on the coalface and really making a difference. So the next slide, please, Joshua. Thank you. So those crazy ideas, those bonkers ideas, the things that we were just Googling and randomly coming up with in the middle of the night. And to be honest, for me and my team, it kept us going as well, because in times of uncertainty and you're just like, you know, I'm just going to Google. I think some of the times I was just typing in volunteering from home, craft volunteering, and the ideas were coming from there. And a lot of it was generated by us. I was approaching a lot of the charities and saying, have you ever thought about doing this? And half the time they would laugh, go, oh, Elaine. And then they would go, do you know what, this would work? And then we'd work on it together. And now many of our charity partners are offering these virtual volunteering to other corporates, generating money from elsewhere, engaging people elsewhere, not just with Sage colleagues. So I mentioned the big virtual day in. We had done a big day in previously in February, online, the big virtual day in online. So where we were trying to encourage people to volunteer on their computer hour and a time here, I mentioned Zooniverse, following charities on social media, that kind of thing. So the idea was there, that people love coming together. We'd had 400 people this summer before. That was our biggest ever event. So we thought, could we top that? Could we come up with something? So we just come up with some ideas. We created a deck, we created a Teams page, so everybody was had a space to communicate. And it just kind of went from there, that we had about 20 different volunteering opportunities. Some of them were craft ideas, where we were having people making cards. We were having people painting rainbows to put in the window, if you remember all the rainbows. We were having people painting rocks, happiness rocks, to leave them around on the garden or on their wall. We did a live bike demo. We support a charity that fixes up bikes and gives them to refugee kids. And we just said, could you do something live? And, let's have a look. We're just about to do our second one tomorrow. And it really worked. It was, it didn't come without its challenges, but it worked. It was different. We had a fancy dress parade. I've never had a virtual fancy dress parade, but we did it anyway. Those of you remember beginning of lockdown, Joe Exotic was the man of the moment. I was literally prancing around my garden dressed up as Joe Exotic, talking like a Southern American. It was just a bit of silliness. It was just a bit of way to bring people together. But my random video had 1,500 likes and shares on LinkedIn, which again showcased what we were doing to others in the Sage community. We had a virtual disco. Again, don't really quite know how it worked, but it did. We had a playlist. We were encouraging people to have disco lights and dancing. And we had 1,000 colleagues sign up. And all throughout the day were engaging. They were loading teams, commenting, dancing, music. It really was. Even talking about it now, guys, it's still giving me goosebumps, because it was such a special day in a time of uncertainty. Sorry, guys, there's the drilling. Sorry. Hopefully it won't be too much longer. But yeah, and then other things came out of that is what Nikki was talking about. There was the war room. That was the evolution of what was an ideas jam. So we got a charity to come, and we got some colleagues to sign up, and we just said, this charity needs to raise money. What can they do? Discuss. And out of that, with 15 people on a call, they decided to make masks, which in April wasn't even a thought of thing. And they then continued to raise money through making masks. They built community. It was really, really powerful. And that just came from, God, what can we do? I need to find a way to bring people together. And then the ideas just kept on coming. We have done live knitting demos where we have encouraged people to make these mini bubble hat things that go on the top of innocent smoothie bottles. But that could be evolved into knitting anything. We've done knitting poppies for the poppy appeal, making bags for cats to sleep in. The clothing clear out has become really popular, where we've been encouraging people to donate their old clothes and then to donate them to a charity. But then what we can do is match fund that donation. Sorry guys, there's the drilling again, I'm really sorry. The penny jar challenge, which everybody was like, what? That's not going to make any money. So we challenged everybody to just find the money. Everybody's got some in their drawers, in the little pot in their car, down the back of the sofa. Well, that alone generated £2,500. I mean, when you have 3,000 colleagues, obviously you've got volume, but it's all of these little things that we were coming up with just to get people moving, just to come up with some ideas. So our live workshops seem to be the most popular, and we booked them around lunchtime. And this is where it got a little bit bonkers. So we've done live brownie making, we've done live pesto making, and at Christmas we did live Christmas wreath making. 200 people signed up for that one, and we had Steph, who runs Oosburn Farm. They're a charity up in the north. She hasn't even got the proper kit. She just had her phone. It was all a little bit wonky. The lighting wasn't that great. But you know what? The feedback that we have had just for that has been unbelievable. So while the drilling is taking place, what I want you to do is just start having a think about those crazy ideas, because we're going to come on to that a little bit later when we do our ideas jam blasting. Sorry, guys. And then but no idea is too crazy, and it could be this stuff that you're already doing that you're like, Elaine, we're already there, but it could be that other person on this call isn't doing that at the same time. So if you can move on to the next slide then, please, Joshua. Thank you. So supporting our charity partners. So I know I've said this probably 400 times already, but our massive focus shifted to supporting fundraising through volunteering and creating awareness. And by offering the chance to explore new things. A lot of our colleagues had never, ever done any of these things before. And we had to just be real about what volunteering was for us. Now, I know many of your organisations, you need the volunteers to support your service users, or you may need volunteers to undertake a particular function. Whereas the joy for me is just, I've got volumes of people and we can find activities and things for them to do. Is watching a live bike demo volunteering? Not in a million years. But did it create awareness for that charity, generate a little bit of income and bring my colleagues together for an hour? Absolutely. And I wouldn't change it. We did have quite a few actually, of our colleagues kicking back that we were watering down volunteering. And you could probably argue, guys, that we did, but you know what? It was the right thing to do at the time. And it was the right thing for our colleagues and our charity partners just to get through a particular time. I think what we also looked at is, what we didn't want is those that couldn't offer virtual volunteering or to flip their model just to take a back seat and be forgotten. We didn't want that. It doesn't sit right with me. So we still keep those communication channels open. And where a lot of our charity partners then did catch up with the thought of virtual volunteering and runs and things like that, we've actively encouraged our colleagues to get behind those events as well. So things like virtual runs seem to be really popular, board games nights and quizzes and things like that. So we move on to the next slide, please, Joshua. That's wonderful. Thank you. Bang on time. So 10 months on, and what does this look like? I never thought in all my life we'd still be here 10 months later. And my crazy ideas bin is starting to run a little bit dry. What we also didn't want to do is then set this as a precedent that that's what volunteering is forever and ever, because one day we will come out of this, right? One day there will be some sense of normality returned. So we didn't want people to forget about the value of volunteering. So we're reintroducing and rebranded what we do for skills-based volunteering, where we're really encouraging people to use their brain to support our charities. We know at the moment that there's going to be a massive staff shortage across the sector just because of redundancies and funding income restrictions. And that was really important to us. But what we've also done is just tried to do some smaller, less big bang events. So at our kickoff this year, so our year starts in October, we did an amazing race. So we had things like 600 staff in the end, online, a little bit similar to the big virtual day in, but what they were doing is racing around the house to find items. And we were aligning it to food poverty. So people were getting tins of beans, packets of biscuits, jars of fruit. And then we were encouraging people to look at what was in their fridge to then come up with recipes. And again, it was that engagement piece. It's that loading photos in and just having that banter, all the while raising awareness and money for our charity partners. We did a Santa dash at Christmas. So we were encouraging people to dress up as Santa and go and dash around. I don't think it would work. We had 400 people that did it. Some people running around their garden, which is a bit random, but it worked. Again, it was fun. It was raising money. It was raising awareness. And then now in January, the business has shifted towards health and well-being. So that messaging is there, take time for you, what are you doing to look after yourself? So we've aligned all of our volunteering to that's showcasing that taking time for someone else is actually good for your soul. So we are back a little bit to the crafty stuff. We're making happiness jars, wall hanging crochet things that charity shops can sell, cards, but we're also encouraging people to get out and move. And then by moving, they're tracking their kilometres, and then we're matching donations to charity. So we're keeping it small and simple because the feedback is that people are just struggling. So we're literally saying 10 minutes. Volunteering is still 10 minutes of time, an hour of time, a few hours at the end of the day. And then what we're trying to do is showcase that volunteering can be done at any time. It doesn't have to be a whole day, that if you have got huge meetings booked in with your bosses, that you can be flexible because the charities are being flexible as well. And then what I'm doing is building in time to have one-to-ones with all of my senior leaders. So I'm back there hustling because their priority is to keep the business going. But they recognise that doing things through foundation also make colleagues feel really connected and valued. So next slide then, please, Joshua, before we move on to our ideas jam. So what does the future look like for us? We will continue with virtual volunteering. I think the big lesson for me is that small bite-sized chunks, that people want to do more, but their work or their family commitments don't enable them to just take a whole day off and go and do something amazing. The ideas jams, I think, were a really big pinnacle point for us. We've had them with Fair Share UK, Apps for Good. These are big sorry guys. These are big national charities that have actually then approached us and said, we need some help here, guys, because we're going to lose our engagement pool. And they're sort of asking us for ideas and help. And again, people love sharing their ideas, giving their opinion. So you're literally sitting round the table, and from small seeds and one person's ideas, all of a sudden becomes these great big plans. Skills-based volunteering is where we need to be, and we've got a long journey to go on at Sage around how we can support charities like yourselves better using the big brains that we've got within the business, and there's a lot more we can do there. What we've called Do It For You, I know that you guys have your ad hoc squad, and I love that as a slogan, so I was kind of replicate that. So we've called it Do It For You, where we're encouraging colleagues to do things with charities that they support themselves in their community, that drive their passion. It's not just stuff that I'm arranging or supporting women or youth or veterans, that they can get out there and do their own thing. And we continue to write how-to guides and sort of packs that people can take away and do things themselves. They're not the best because you're writing things on the fly, but they're a start, and that's what counts. Whenever COVID finishes, I am fully expecting the minute the button gets pushed that my CEO is going to say, right, get everybody out. We want out in the community and doing what we do best, which is face-to-face volunteering. And we are already planning. So I'm really sorry about this, guys, but I need hot water. We're finishing up shortly before we go into the Ideas Jam, so I'll go and just ask them to give us a couple of minutes. But back to the face-to-face volunteering, that for us is where we just wish that we could do more, but with us all working from home, it's just not something we're able to offer right now. And I think our speaker series, I mentioned that before, there is something we'll continue. Inviting a charity in to talk about the work that they do, so people can have their lunch, listen, ask questions, has been a massive learning curve for us, because when people hear these social issues firsthand, they're more inclined to get involved. They don't hear it from me, they're hearing it from the charities or the service users they support. So that will definitely be something we'll evolve into. So next slide then, please, Joshua. So questions and ideas sharing. So what we're going to do next is we're going to have a bit of a break and a breather. One, so you can go and grab a cup and stretch your legs. Two, so I can go and say to the engineer, can you just lay off the drilling for a minute? And then we're going to go into our Ideas Jam board. And then that's where you guys can start driving the ideas. So if you can go on to the next slide, please, Joshua. Thank you. So it's, oh, okay. So it's, oh, sorry, that hasn't changed. There's a spelling mistake on there. Sorry, guys. How embarrassing. I thought I changed it. So let's hear your ideas. So your ideas around virtual volunteering. Is it going to change your service? What barriers could you face? And how are you going to communicate this out to your service users? So what we're going to do is, like I said, we'll have a few minute break. We'll put everybody into small groups, which I believe Joe and Joshua are going to sort out into breakout rooms. And then you can start sharing your ideas. And we're just going to copy and paste the link to the Ideas Jam boards. It's really simple. You just need to open up a new browser, copy and paste it in. Hopefully, if it works, you will then have, it's like a virtual whiteboard. And in your groups, there should be one each. I've made 5. And then there's just some stickies. And you can use sticky notes and text boxes to... sorry, I'm so sorry, guys. It's so embarrassing. You can use stickies and text boxes to then write down your ideas. And then what we'll do is the deck will be saved afterwards. And then what you can do then is take that away and share that within your team. So if you can unshare your screen, Joshua, please, so I can see everybody's lovely faces. I am going to go and tell the engineer to lay off the drilling for 5 minutes. So if we say, if everybody can come back at 20 past, that just gives you 5 minutes when everybody stretch your legs, do some jumping up and down, and then I can work on making sure we've got the break room set up with Joshua and Joe, and also then we've got the link to the Ideas Jam board ready. So, okay. So
Elaine, we should say the link will be in the chat. Yes?
Yeah. Yeah, the link will be in the chat that you can then copy and paste in. So we'll see you all in 5 minutes, guys. And I'm going to go and sort the engineer out, so maybe stop drilling for a minute. So thank you, everyone. Speak to you shortly.